I've got a bit of a secret. I love romance novels. Always have done, always will. There are problems with the genre. Oh boy, there are some problems. It's hardly a week in the romance world without some kind of scandal. But I will defend, to the hilt, a slice of the publishing world dedicated to women, women's desire, diverse couplings, queer couplings, unconventional couplings, and where it can all be celebrated together wholeheartedly. That being said, only the very worst parts of romance seem to hit mainstream recognition level. Say romance novels to someone uninitiated into our world, and they'll think of two things: historical bodice rippers with rakes and virginal young ladies, or abuse with the thinnest veneer of love draped over the top. I've got a lot of time for classical historical romance. Lots of those books were really trying to push the boundaries of what women were supposed to find sexually appealing or acceptable, even if they had to frame those things negatively. But I do not have any time or space in my head for quote-unquote alpha males. Look, I understand the fantasy. A lot of cis women have to bear a lot of emotional pressure from trying to be everything for everyone, managing work, children, large adult male son, keeping on top of a home, and being essentially responsible for the emotional and physical health of everyone around them. An alpha male romance is based on the fantasy of not having to do any of that, of being looked after, of having a male partner who is actively interested and invested in your life. The problem is that there are ways to explore fantasies that are more ethical than others. Too often, alpha male stereotypes are aggressively, abusively dominant men with a side of, "but I can fix him, mama," thrown in for a little extra flavour. They blur the lines of consent and control in ways that don't do it for me, because hey, it's no fun to be reminded of living in fear. Romance should be fun. It should be a diversion, a distraction from reality for a few hours. It should not be exhausting or emotionally draining to get through. That brings us on to the multimedia franchise we're discussing today.
And now after him, there's just... After.
After was written in the space coming after 50 Shades and Twilight, and carries not only a lot of the same tropes, but a lot of the same details. Tessa is a copy of Bella Swan, a brown-haired girl in Washington State who likes books and is the most virginal virgin who ever virgined. Like 50 Shades, After started out as a fanfiction, but like the worst kind of fanfiction because it was real person fic, so yikes, about One Direction. Sadly, they are not participating in the purge, but instead, Baby's first completed written project. Plotting, characterization, growth, themes? You're not going to find a single one of those here. This was a serial writing project that unexpectedly got big and had to be hastily tidied up. And of course, in our current streaming hellscape, it was guaranteed to be turned into a franchise. So, we're putting on our script doctor hats. I have a hat. Yeah, boy. Script doctor hats. And we're trying to think of ways that After could have been improved to a level where it would still not be good, but no longer frustrating and boring. Let's go! Plot summary time! If you've spared your eyeballs and brain the knowledge of the After franchise, then congratulations, you're a far better person than I am. This is the part of the essay video that absolutely everybody loves. Going through the plot. We're going through the plot. Whew. Get on your cowboy boots for some cowboy shit. Tessa is leaving home to go to Washington State University, accompanied by her mother and boyfriend. She has not existed a single day before this point. She has no memories, friends, or meaningful connections with other human beings. Her mother is controlling. Her relationship with her boyfriend is sexless, like two 5-year-olds who declare they are dating. On her arrival at Halls, she meets roommate Steph. Steph is a bad girl because she vapes and wears revealing clothing. Steph says she will take Tessa under her wing, and they have a great natural chemistry, but are sadly not the romantic couple of this story. Tessa's mum is controlling, Tessa is a wet paper towel. One of her character traits is revealed. She likes classical literature. Of course, nothing but the finest of literatures for our girl. So it's nothing modern, nothing specific. She likes the big, famous books that are on high school reading lists because these female characters are never into Imperial Russian literature or classical Latin literature or the plays of John Millington Synge. Just saying. Tessa is an economics student, and on her first day in this big, empty, not full of extras so really cheap university set, meets Landon. Really scraped the barrel for that name, didn't you? They have a natural spark, great chemistry, and are sadly not the romance for this story. Instead, we are introduced to Hardin, a block of wood made of primordial slime. Tessa comes back to her room from the shower to find Hardin in her room. When politely asked to leave because he's making her uncomfortable, he is an asshole and denigrates her. He patronises her and insults her interests. This will be important later. Steph invites Tessa to a party because Tessa needs at least one person to be kind to her, and takes her to the One Direction frat house with our off-brand band members, Zed, Jace, and Hardin. A dare game is played, and everyone mocks Tessa for being a virgin because somehow this is important. I don't remember this being part of my university experience where we ganged up on all the virgins and were mean to them, but maybe I went to a different kind of university. Hardin is dead to kiss Tessa. Tessa is uncomfortable and leaves. Surprise, surprise, she walks into Hardin's room, and he has read a book that is studied in high school, Wuthering Heights, which he mistakenly calls a romance, showing how the author has never read anything but a plot summary of this work. Rudeness is apparently what revs Tessa's engine, and they almost kiss. On her way home, Noah is controlling and criticises her for interacting in age-appropriate activities at her university. After an unspecified period of time, Tessa is at an English literature class, which of course, it's about Pride and Prejudice. These stories never have any of the other books that Jane Austen wrote. It's never Persuasion, which is my favourite one. It's never Northanger Abbey or Mansfield Park. But anyway, Hardin is at this class, and Tessa and Hardin have a back and forth where he is shitty about women, but is tolerated because he is our designated hero and the son of the university chancellor. Steph gets a tattoo while Tessa watches. They have a moment of genuine emotional connection where Tessa explains that her life has been utterly controlled by her mother to this point, who is implied led her into a relationship with Noah. Tessa is lonely and vulnerable. Perfect meat for a blockhead like Hardin. For inexplicable reasons, they end up having a date. They swim together at a lake. Fully knowing that she has never had a sexual experience before, Hardin arouses her without explaining what's happening to her. This is an abuser's tactic, and I hate it. He refuses to confirm they are dating, and I want to tear my hair out. Noah comes to visit, not being aware on how many relationships manage to survive one person going to university. They go out, a mild pass is made at Tessa, and Hardin becomes a rampaging rage monster ready to inflict harm on other human beings. It is a concern. During the night, Landon, who is Hardin's stepbrother, texts Tessa, as she is now expected to be responsible for Hardin's emotional health. Welcome to the next 40 years of your life. You touched him, he's now yours to manage. Hardin is sad because his father is marrying again, while his mother is apparently poor. He is aggressive and unpleasant, but as she has pleased him, he switches to the honeymoon section of the abuser's cycle. Tessa, charmed, fools around with him. She stays over in his room, so her relationship with Noah blows up, her life is a mess. Steph consoles her. Hardin keeps pushing and they fool around some more. This is discovered by her mother, who tries to reassert her control over Tessa. She makes threats. Tessa swears she'll be independent. Because she's changing him. She's fixing him. They decide to move into a place with each other, great idea, and attend the wedding of Hardin's father. Hardin reveals his trauma that must be fixed. His father, the chancellor of a $1 billion university, was once a shady businessman who did shady business at bars. Okay, sure. Not only this, but he angered a group of criminal men, and the criminal men broke into their house and gang raped Hardin's mother in front of him. Okay. He loves Tessa and does not tell her. A girl called Molly, who is, I guess, the antagonist of this story, decides to make the plot start right at the end of the movie. She texts Hardin, Tessa is upset, they have a pointless fight. Repeat that for all of the movies. Everyone comes together for the big confrontation and the reveal of the problem that will drive the couple apart before they get back together again. It's a romance novel, it has to be done. Molly reveals that Hardin was set up in a bet to make Tessa fall in love with him. Très dramatique. Hardin cries in the rain. Tessa tries to re-establish relationships with those she has pushed away. Noah is forgiving and says that university is about finding yourself and maturing and changing, which is the only reasonable statement in this mess. Tessa decides to become a literature student and applies for a publishing internship. At the last day of class, the literature professor hands her Hardin's final paper for the year. So, his pass or fail grade. And it's all about how Tessa is his Elizabeth Bennet and they're like Heathcliff and Cathy, their souls are one and the same, without any irony whatsoever or acknowledgement that Wuthering Heights is about intergenerational trauma caused by two abusive people. If someone says that they're your Heathcliff and you're their Cathy, you should run away from them before they strangle your puppy to death. This professor presumably also has many, many, many other things to do than managing the relationship of two of her many hundreds, possibly thousands of students, but the story ends with Hardin and Tessa presumably going to get back together as there are 3 more books and a prequel to go. Fix number 1. Tessa needs real character growth. With that out of the way and everyone on the same page, let's discuss our fixes. The first fix should be that Tessa needs measurable character growth that is centred on her journey and not around Dick. There are so many naive young everywomans in the romance genre, which is really frustrating because the idea is, especially from a very young, unexperienced author, that anyone can project onto them. That sounded like this fear of giving them really strong character traits. So Tessa is modest, shy, and bookish, which are a lot of generic qualities that lets a large group of quite young people see themselves in her. But what gives Tessa the potential of a really unique story is her family background. Her mother is emotionally abusive. Her mother's controlling, smothering, and has planned Tessa's life for her, including her degree choice and her boyfriend. The scenario that Tessa is in as a character should be one that provides a pretty reliable arc of growth. University is a place where you can grow hugely as a person simply because you're not in the place or the environment where you grew up. You're around new people, new situations, new friends, new interests. University is a place where you can rediscover and redefine who you want to be as a person. You can find that person out. It's nothing revolutionary, but the satisfaction of watching, steady character growth and watching a character overcome abuse by finding newfound family. Yes, please, give me this. This is very much part of my interests. Getting to see Tessa making genuine friends, discovering things that she likes for herself without her mother's input, and reach a point where she has the strength to forge a new path for herself would be really interesting. I would watch that. It would, it's nothing new, but it's satisfying and relatable. And romance doesn't have to be sidelined in this story. Romance can be a part of that, but it should not be the centre point of Tessa's growth. Which is the problem here. Tessa's growth is centred around Mayor McFuck Digslab. Having sex with Hardin is presented as her growth when trauma or anxiety around sex are not part of Tessa's emotional makeup. You know, she's the most virgin who ever virgined, but that's not the problem that needs resolving for her. She doesn't have hang-ups about sex. This is not connected to the wider issue of parental abuse. You know, her mother wasn't a sex predator. Her willingness to suddenly confront her mother doesn't come from herself. She doesn't want to change to make herself happy, but to keep Hardin in her life and keep him happy. And this appears like a change, but internally, what's changed for Tessa? After all, she hasn't done anything but swapped her mother's control for the control of a boyfriend. Fix number 2, Hardin is bad. Not bad as in like, oh, he's such a naughty boy. Because his behaviour's only bad if you've lived an incredibly sheltered life. It's not a dig or a read, it's just it is what it is. Hardin is a bad boy in the most generic ways possible. Things about him that are bad. Tattoos. Black clothes. Drives a muscle car. Drinks the alcohol and smoketh the weed. Rude to people. Believes that Wuthering Heights is a romance and not capital letter romance. Wearing black and having tattoos makes you a bad boy. Well, sign me up as the baddest boy in town. No. What's bad about Hardin is that he's a bad person. He is emotionally insecure, jealous and controlling boyfriend who makes no substantial changes in his behaviour or growth over the course of the story. There's a lot in his character that I can recognise, and none of from experiences, and none of it's good. Being mocked and humiliated in front of people, jealousy and possessiveness, the need to claim someone sexually, withholding affection and interest, socially isolating a partner, forcing emotional intimacy by moving the relationship at a pace that is not healthy, being emotionally needy to compel another person to keep trying, to keep being invested because you can be fixed, using sexual inexperience as a tool against someone. And the one that I find especially difficult to engage in fiction is complete 180s in terms of emotion, going from 0 to 110 in terms of anger and emotional intensity with no rhyme or reason. Living in an environment where you will never know which of your actions are acceptable and which will result of being screamed and berated and insulted until you crumble and cry is it's not good. It's not fun. It's not passionate love. It's exhausting. And it's supposed to be. It conditions you to blame yourself for their emotional mood swings, that if only you were a better person, they'd be happier. If only you could stop disappointing them, they would love you or be happy like they ought to be. You take on the weight of their emotional health, this burden that is always on you and controls your thoughts and your behaviour. And when times are good, they're great, but there's always that swing back and the pause as you wait. And you wait. And you wait until the explosion comes for you. Living with fear that deeply inside you, that it's a constant wait that changes how you think, how you react, and how you function on every fundamental level until you cannot recognise yourself anymore. You learn to repress every single thing about you that can be weaponised and turned back. And even then, that's never enough. It avoids being completely horrifying because Hardin is a paper-thin character that's just, it's really, really flat. Like, he's either sullen or he's, like, shrieking, like, fuck every 5 seconds, and like, he can only project emotions if it's the most extreme version of what a regular human being might do. So it's not that scary. It's not that romantic either. A good romance should explore the growth of both leads. They should each have a fault or a friction or a complication that causes a barrier to this couple getting together. They each have something that doesn't quite go, and how they're going to fix this doesn't quite go, and this is the story. Let's take a classic example. Pride and Prejudice. Both Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy don't like each other based on those two named qualities in the titles, and the story is their growth away from those flaws and recognising that they are compatible and they do fit together. Hardin does not move away from his flaw of being an abusive shithead, but constantly demands that Tessa move further and further out of her comfort zone. Where does he confront his behaviour for her? Where does he make an actual, tangible change? Because I'm not opposed necessarily to a romance where a person confronts their abusive behaviour and recovers from that mindset. Exploring recovery from abuse from the perspective of both sides is something that could be extremely interesting if handled well. But that's not what this story is about. It's about how fixing someone is sexually empowering and that being treated badly is desirable. Fix number 3, Hardin's trauma needs to be centered on himself. So hey, spoiler warnings and content warnings for sexual assault, so to skip ahead to fix number 4 if you're not down with that. Reasons are given as to why Hardin is an asshole. His behaviour is bad because of trauma. At 8 years old, he was a witness to his mother being gang raped by a group of criminals. They broke into the family home because his father, the Chancellor of Washington State University, a job with a salary of $500,000 per year, did some bad business and they decided to find a different way of settling his debts. This is a bad idea for many reasons. For a start, the idea that a person who has been traumatised must then turn into an abuser and then thus the behaviour is acceptable and excusable is gross. I don't see a link between Hardin's behaviours and his specific trauma, and traumatised people don't automatically become abusers. On top of that, there is no level of trauma that makes abusing another human being acceptable. Going, oh well, he's traumatised, he can't be held accountable for his behaviour, is pretty unhelpful for everyone else around him that has to suffer the consequences of how he behaves. Your mental illness is not an excuse to hurt other people. I'm sorry that you had to learn it this way. There's also the matter that the use of sexual assault has long been used as a cheap ploy in romance novels. It is overplayed, overused, and rarely meaningfully deployed. Sexual assault is a cheap shop tactic for forcing readers onto the side of one character or trying to show how serious a situation is. How do you show that a male character is evil? Rape. How do you show that a heroine is so desirable? Rape. How do you show that the hero is a good guy even though he's an utter wazzock? He's the only guy who doesn't commit a rape. How do you show that the lead girl's not like those other women? Well, she fights back against rape. Unskilled writers will throw some sexual assault into a story as it's fairly predictable that your readership will see it negatively, and this can be exploited to form an emotional low or high that is otherwise unearned. Young or inexperienced authors will often use sexual assault because it's easy to use that as a triggering or traumatic event, but they lack the skill to explore how serious and long-lasting rape trauma can be and the nuanced ways it influences and impacts a person's life. Only it's not Hardin's rape trauma, it's his mother's. His mother is victimised, but the focus is on how much pain her rape caused Hardin. It's almost like, I would call it emotional fridging. Fridging being where female characters are killed off for the sake of male characters. Here is emotional fridging, where female characters are brutalised in order to create pain to give plot to a male character. Even though Hardin's mother is still alive and we're told briefly that she's recovered from the trauma, off screen, because she's not important to the story. Her role in the story is to provide backstory, and the only reason for her to have this backstory is to provide a reason why Hardin is abusive. After all, Hardin can't be the victim of sexual assault. Not only does that make the plot too similar to 50 Shades, but Hardin is an alpha. He's the alpha in this relationship. Alphas take control. They can't be victims. That's what women are there for. His growth is focused on his response to someone else's trauma, and that makes his arc feel hollow. There is no flaw or barrier he must find a solution for, no resolution for his emotional growth. And this is an easy fix. Hardin's trauma should be centered on something that happened to Hardin. Tessa has her arc of overcoming the emotional abuse of her mother. Hardin should have a corresponding arc that complements hers. Maybe he was the survivor of childhood cancer and was in recovery for a long time, isolating him from other people and sort of lessening his social skills. He might have been a carer for a family member that had a disability or a terminal illness and suffered the grinding weight of trying to keep up, trying to keep positive while having a burden that a child shouldn't have to carry. But maybe he survived a car accident that killed someone he cared about and left him feeling that death could come at any point and there's no point forming close emotional bonds, so he must wrestle people. Oh, that's Darby Allin's backstory. Maybe he was severely bullied at school for being a pretentious little twat who memorised sections of Shakespeare and now puts on this bad boy front to cover his tendency to be a theatre kid and his deep insecurities. Come on, he's totally a performer. All this badness is just a front. That's why he never does anything actually bad other than inflict emotional abuse on girls too naive to see it. Fix number 4. The relationship is actively presented as bad. This relationship is made of nothing but the reddest of flags. And not Karl Marx red, baby! Red for danger, red flags all the way down. Fundamentally, other people are not your medicine. Any relationship that can be brought to a breaking point by having a conversation is not a stable and healthy relationship. And these two cannot have a single conversation about anything at any point without descending into screaming at each other. Which, great job there, guys. Emotional intensity that is unbearable in real life can be appealing in fiction. But, well, where are the redeeming features of this romance? It's presented as an aspirational fantasy. If only your first boyfriend had been this good. It's presented as this aspirational fantasy. Look, Hardin's devoted because he won't let Tessa see her friends, and he's dedicated when he screams and shouts at her. It's so romantic to wake up in 20 years' time and realise you spent your youth trapped to a man who actively disrespects you every waking moment while expecting you to be invested in every fart he makes. So, what is the redeeming part of this romance? What is good about it? What benefits does the relationship bring either Tessa or Hardin? They have good sex. Well, pretty conventional heterosexual penis and vagina, nothing more adventurous than that sex that never really focuses on Tessa's needs, but other than that, the thing they enjoy doing together is doing each other. The relationship is purely based on fucking. That's it. So go with that. Go with the fact that this is a relationship that has no greater basis other than they enjoy rubbing each other's genitals. Tessa has never had sex before, but has now discovered, hey, it's something I do like. And she is overwhelmed by this discovery about herself and feels that she would lose it without having Hardin in her life. Her inexperience is what draws Hardin in, and he presents himself as the only person who can get her off. After all, it's not as if she knows how to do it. Present this relationship as being as unhealthy as it is, as being exploitative, as being exhausting and draining, and a struggle that Tessa feels committed to because she's never been in a serious adult relationship before. And when you're in the position of having the partner demand of you to make it work God damn it, you're going to make it work, and you feel like a failure if you let it down. Especially when this is Tessa's chance of proving herself after everything she's been through with her mother. She has to make this work. There's no other option for her. Which leads into my main fix. Fix 5. The film should be about Tessa discovering herself as being queer with Steph. Surprise, surprise, the queer person thinks this should be a queer relationship movie. Things just need to be a bit more gay, and that's a fact. It's a verifiable fact. You may quote me on this. There are not a lot of gay romance movies out there. This story is ripe for being made queer. The actress playing Tessa has chemistry with pretty much every character in this film, other than Hardin. Womp womp. But she has an especially immediate click with Steph. Steph has been vastly improved from the source material, wherein every person with a vagina who was not Tessa was an immediate enemy, and she is presented as someone who is caring and interested in Tessa's life. It's Steph who wants Tessa to explore herself, who introduces her to other people, who wants her to find friends and new interests, and then there's this scene. The scene of Steph comforting Tessa with a little snuggle in bed. This is when I knew. This is when I knew what the ultimate fix for this wretched story would be! We'll keep Tessa's sheltered background, and the boyfriend, which was frankly just a friend with the added bonus of pretending to other people in your class and your family that you're both completely, totally, 100% straight. Her mother is not very permitting or tolerant, having a very narrow view of what success for her daughter will be and what kind of life Tessa will be allowed to have. But Tessa's out of her control now. She's in a new environment where she can start to explore who she is and who she wants to be. She can throw out the old rules and set her own boundaries, and Steph is there. There's a new friend, because Tessa doesn't have actual friends, and isn't that exciting and lovely? Keep the relationship with Hardin. Controversial, I know. She's exploring. Tessa's being swept away by being out in the world. Suddenly, the amount of attention he's paying to her is flattering. It's her first time feeling attractive and grown up, and it's really hard to pull back when someone is that focused on you, that set on winning you over, that set on being the new influence in your life, because she's not used to not having someone controlling her and her life. But it isn't right. Tessa is being asked to micromanage the emotions of another human being. It's another person seeking to control who she is, what she is, and where she's going to end up. It requires a greater and greater effort to keep things feeling that they're okay, but her life, this newfound precious life she's fought hard for, it's slipping away from her. She's losing track, she's losing focus. Hardin is demanding so much, he needs so much, he takes so much. What is left of Tessa? Who even is she anyway? Boom, in comes Steph. She keeps on supporting Tessa this whole time, through every tear, through every trial, through every shitty thing Hardin does. She's not going to let Tessa carry on hurting herself in this way, not after growing and striving so much. Tessa deserves so much more than this. Something. Someone else. The moment of realization of why nothing has felt right until now. Of why it was such a struggle to make things seem to work, only for them to always be falling apart. Of why Tessa knew she was different, why people knew she was different, but she never quite understood why. But it all makes sense now. The kiss. It's a perfect moment. And then they set fire to Hardin's car. Be gay, do crime, make that miserable little shithead have to actually emote something. So that is my script doctor for After. If you liked it, give it a whole like. If you disliked it, give it a dislike. It all increases the engagement algorithm. You can support me on Ko-fi with a one-time donation. I just moved house and I don't have a filming space set up yet, so I hope you like my dresser and this bright pink wall that a teen girl left for me, which I thought was appropriate. Have a good one. I like shouting about romance novels. I might do some more in the future because I'm kind of burnt out from a long term. But see ya.